Today's podcast is brought to you by Chikara Wrestle Factory, 4711 Wingate Street, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, where they specialize in lucha libre, porosu, European, British, and German styles, mixed martial arts, and American pro wrestling, all built into the curriculum at the Wrestle Factory, where they strive to create the most well-rounded performers active today. Hey, yo, Pro Wrestling Podcast listeners, help us out and click subscribe to show your support. And to make it a little bit more interesting, we're shooting for our first 100 subscribers on YouTube, so we'll be giving shout-outs to random new subscribers as we try to reach that goal. Let's go for the first 100. Hello everyone and welcome to this episode of the Pro Wrestling Podcast. This is episode 61. We're reviewing all the happenings that took place on Monday Night Raw coming out of WrestleMania, and there was plenty to talk about. You know, they kicked off the show with something that, if you are a true wrestling fan, I don't think we've ever seen before. Roman Reigns coming to the ring. They did a moment there where they were kind of paying homage to The Undertaker, who, you know, retires at the end of WrestleMania. Roman Reigns called that last week on Raw, and you knew they were going to hit his music and have him come out. The minute he came out, the hail of boos was something ferocious. You know, people have been on Roman Reigns for quite a long time now, but this was an exceptionally loud hail down of boos. He got into the ring, and he was trying to cut a promo for the better part of 6, 7, 8 minutes. And in the whole time he was trying to speak, every time he put the mic up to his mouth, the people just rained down the boos, to the point that he couldn't even really get anything out of his mouth. So at the end of the day, he ends up bringing it up at the very end, and he says, "This is my yard now," and then just drops the mic and walks out. What a great way to start the show. If you want to bring more nuclear heat onto Roman Reigns, they sure found a way to do it. I don't know if his character is really going to be able to rebound the way Vince expects him to in time for next year's WrestleMania, the way this is going. I mean, I've seen a lot of wrestlers that people were not fond of in the past. I've never seen this kind of reaction for a wrestler. I think that people are really tired of having Roman Reigns crammed down their throat, and now it's to the point where they're flat out revolting against this guy. I can't imagine him being able to cut a promo anytime soon where people are actually going to listen to him. The first match of the night, one that a couple weeks ago we could only dream of seeing, but we actually get to see on Monday Night Raw. The Hardys come out to defend the Raw Tag Team Championship against Carl Anderson, and Luke Gallows. It's a decent match, back and forth, very physical. It's nice to see the Hardys. I know I love the broken characters, and I'm really hoping that once that's resolved, we get to see more of the broken characters. Maybe you could introduce that at a later time, but in the meantime, it's kind of nice to see some Team Extreme. It just is. Even when they were doing the broken characters and wrestling in the ring, their whole wrestling style was slightly different while they were doing that. And this, we're able to see them act the way the Hardys did when their first run and second run in WWE. And it's almost like a nostalgia act, but it's really cool to see. They pick up the win. Great swanton off the corner after a twist of fate. Typical Hardy win. And it didn't make Carl Anderson look very weak. It actually made Gallows and Anderson look pretty good. So hopefully going forward, they'll find something creative to do with Gallows and Anderson until they can get them back into the World Tag Team Championship picture. In the meantime, the Hardys are primed for an incredible run if WWE books them correctly. The next segment is Neville. He's in the ring. He's talking about how on 205 Live they're going to have an official coronation for the King of the Cruiserweights. And before he gets to finish his promo, he gets cut off by Mustafa Ali, who, if you haven't been watching 205 Live in the last couple weeks, Mustafa Ali has been solid. He is clearly a future superstar on that brand and could potentially move up to the next level if he can get his ring technique down and really do something special down in 205 Live. There's no reason to believe he couldn't play, kind of like the Rey Mysterio kind of character. I actually am really impressed with him. They see some of the movesets that he hit in this match and in several matches recently. They end up making the match, Mustafa Ali and Neville, and it was a really decent match. Now, the fans were totally out of it. They were paying attention to people smacking beach balls around in the crowd instead of paying attention to the match in the ring, which is just a travesty because these two can really put on a great match. Most of the cruiserweights can. I wish the people would start really giving them an opportunity, and I hope that the smart marks online here, listening to podcasts like this one and others, I hope you guys understand that the product that they're putting out is on par with anything else you find anywhere else in the world. So I hope people start giving them the opportunity to really get the recognition and the name brand promotion that they deserve for what they've been doing. So please tune in 205 Live. You're missing some great stuff if you don't. Vince McMahon makes his triumphant return to television. He comes out, he starts talking about how next week there's going to be a superstar shakeup. between Raw and SmackDown. I guess that's their new way of handling this. Instead of calling it a draft or whatever you want to call it, they're going to have a superstar shakeup where trades and swaps of this and that can happen between the two brands. He also announced that after last night at WrestleMania that Stephanie is injured. She'll be on the shelf for a while, so she's out. And he announces he's got a new Raw general manager who was just inducted into the Hall of Fame. And you cue up the music, and here comes Teddy Long, dancing his way on the stage. It was a very funny moment. Then he lets everybody know, that's not it. For a split second there, you actually had to wonder. You had a strong feeling you already knew what was going to happen, but you just had to wonder, would they really do something this stupid and put Teddy Long back into that picture? And of course not. They dismiss Teddy Long, and he introduces Kurt Angle as the new general manager of Raw. So curious to see how Kurt Angle does in this role. I think he'll be amazing at it, but my only fear is I don't want to wait forever to see Kurt Angle get in the ring. And by being the general manager, he needs enough time to build up some kind of program along the way to be able to set up some storyline to be able to get in the ring with somebody. So hopefully they can do that rather quickly, because I like I said, I'm a huge Kurt Angle fan. I don't want to sit around for the next 9 months waiting to see Kurt Angle get in the ring. I want to see it sooner than that. The next segment, they have the New Day. They come out to the ring. They were talking about how great WrestleMania was, but how they didn't have a match, and they issue an open challenge. This is the highlight of Raw for me. And that's because as they issue their open challenge and you wait for the music to hit, here comes the Revival. The Revival have been brought up from the NXT roster. They come to the ring. They totally destroy the New Day bike for their ice cream and whatnot. Get into the ring, and we got a match between the former longest-running Raw Tag Team Champions in history and the longest-reigning NXT Tag Team Champions in history. So, interesting matchup. Now, I'm never a fan of the call-ups getting such a high-profile win right away. I'm just not. It makes New Day look weak, and I don't like that. At the end of the match, you had Xavier Woods going for an honor roll, and it gets countered into the Shatter Machine, and that's how they pick up the win. I'm okay with the way the sequence went at the end. I just wouldn't have done it their opening night. I would have had something else. I don't know how I would have handled it, but I felt like this made the New Day look really, really weak. Now, if you're moving them to SmackDown, I'm fine with it, because they could really revitalize the tag team division on SmackDown. But let's just hope. At the end of the day, the tag team division on Raw, if there are no move-arounds and no shakeups, is looking really good right about now. I expect Enzo and Cass or the New Day, or both potentially, to go over to SmackDown, but this, I thought, made the New Day look weak. They did run an angle where there's a possible injury to Kofi Kingston, because after the match, they attack him, attack his leg, put him in a submission hold, and stomp on his leg and everything. I don't know what the purpose of that was, but we'll have to keep our eyes on Kofi Kingston's status going forward. The next section is a segment in the back. Kurt Angle is in his office or whatnot. Enzo and Cass are come in, and they start running down who's a certified G and a bona fide stud and all this and that, and what you can and can't teach, like they always do. I feel like I'm watching a broken record whenever they come out. I wish somebody would give them some kind of better promo than that. But I actually thought that it was money watching Kurt Angle sit there and listen to them talk. And they talked about how they have a match later in the night for the number one contendership to the tag titles, and how Cesaro and Sheamus are SAWFT soft. And as they walk away, Kurt Angle goes, "That's not how you spell soft." He's just a pure comedic genius with Kurt Angle. That guy, it doesn't get old. He's awesome. The next match is a 6-woman tag team match. You have on one side, you have Emma, who's returning to the ring for the first time in pretty much forever. Charlotte and Nia Jax. Their opponents are Bayley, Sasha Banks, and Dana Brooke. It's actually a relatively decent match back and forth. I didn't know what the pertinence of all these people being out in the ring are. It's kind of strange that when you see Dana Brooke after she got obliterated by Charlotte a couple weeks ago, and you see Emma, who hasn't been there in forever, you suddenly get the impression that maybe Raw's women's division isn't quite as shallow a pool to swim in as we thought a couple weeks ago. Now, there are rumors out there that Charlotte's going to move over to SmackDown. I'm not a huge fan of that, by the way. I would love to see a couple more things before she makes the move, but this match, very entertaining. You end up seeing Bayley, Sasha, and Dana Brooke pick up the win. But the more important part is after the match, Charlotte gets in the faces of Emma and Nia Jax. She's really giving them some attitude, and Nia Jax just absolutely obliterates Charlotte, which either means Charlotte's going to SmackDown, or you could be setting up a feud that I've been salivating to see. I would love to see Nia Jax versus Charlotte. I think that's something that's long overdue. I think they should have done that back in like January, so you could have had some other backstory heading into WrestleMania. The next segment is a backstage segment again. Sami Zayn is back there talking to Kurt Angle, hoping that he's going to have the same kind of relationship with Kurt that he had with Mick Foley. As he's complaining about the Andre the Giant Battle Royal and whatnot, here comes Jinder Mahal. I really wish they'd figure out something really good to do with him. I think his look is phenomenal. He's not too jacked up, but he's jacked up enough. He looks like a really tough guy. I would love to see him get a prime spot on the show. It's not going to happen, but whatever. At the end of the day, Kurt Angle tells him to go settle it in the ring, which is going to set up a match for later in the show. When you come back from break, Paul Heyman and Brock Lesnar are in the ring. Paul Heyman starts telling a story about a superhero who came to town with his spear and his jackhammer and went up against the biggest dog in the town and all this and that. Just total storybook nonsense, but it was funny because Paul Heyman has a way to eloquate himself, to make himself sound very entertaining no matter what he's saying. The most important part of what Paul Heyman was saying was at the very end, he said, "Thank you, Taker. Thank you, Brock." Brock, obviously, for getting rid of Goldberg, and Taker paying homage to The Undertaker's career, and I really respect that he said that. And if you were watching closely, Brock Lesnar's nodding in agreement when he's saying that. I think Brock Lesnar has a ton of respect for The Undertaker. They mentioned that they're looking for a new challenger. It could be Roman Reigns, it could be Matt Hardy or Jeff Hardy, and instead, you cue the music and here comes Braun Strowman, and I didn't see that coming, but I am very much okay with that. I think that would be an awesome match. Everybody would love to see. Strowman's clearly not ready to be Universal Champion yet, but he is a huge draw. He's becoming more and more popular. And the explosion from the fans yelling, "Braun, Braun, Braun." Absolutely awesome. Vince McMahon must have been grinning ear to ear in the back listening to that because he knows he's got a future megastar on his hands. They do some face-off a little bit. Brock ends up not saying anything as Strowman starts talking to him about how when he's done with Roman Reigns, maybe he'll turn his attention to Brock. And he pushes him in his shoulder where he has the championship belt laying, and Brock ends up taking the belt and laying it in the middle of the ring between the two of them and challenging them to get the fight on now. And unfortunately for the fans in attendance, fortunately for the booking of the future, Braun Strowman backs off and leaves the ring. Very cool segment. I really like what they're doing with Braun. He doesn't talk too much. He talks just enough to get his point across and look like a legitimate tough guy and pose a real legitimate threat to Brock Lesnar. And I've been next to Brock Lesnar. I've got pictures with Brock Lesnar. Brock Lesnar's a monster. He looks small next to Braun Strowman. I can't imagine what I would look like standing next to Braun Strowman. Someday maybe I'll be able to find that out. The next section, Chris Jericho's in the back talking about how he wants his rematch for the United States Championship. He will be getting that rematch. He puts Owen's fingertip on the list, which, whatever, that's... Chris Jericho can say anything he wants to say. It's always going to be funny. It's just his nature. But Kurt Angle does let him know he's going to have to find him a new partner for Seth Rollins, who comes in because Jericho's clearly not in any shape to wrestle that night because of the beating he took at WrestleMania. So we have to wait and see who that mystery partner is going to be because none of us smart marks had any idea who it was going to be. The next segment is that number one contender tag team championship, or number one contender to the tag team championship match between Cesaro and Sheamus and Enzo and Cass. This match was somewhat overly predictable. It's the same match we've seen for the last 6 months. I'm a little bit tired of seeing it. I understand why they did it. They did it to put Cesaro and Sheamus over because they'll make a better match with the Hardys, and now it clears the way for Enzo and Cass to make a move over to SmackDown. But I just don't like burying tag teams. And I feel like that happened to quite a few talents on this show. They end up getting the clean win. It'll be an awesome match going head to head. The end of the match was actually cool because you got to see Sheamus throw Enzo off the turnbuckle into the European uppercut, which Enzo sold that something fierce. That was an awesome way to end the match. You see, our next match is the Sami Zayn versus Jinder Mahal match. I don't even know why this was on television. Completely worthless match. Sami Zayn destroys him, hits the Aluva kick at the end and picks up the win. I guess this is filling time, doing something with Sami Zayn to keep him relevant until you can figure out what the heck to do with him. We go to our main event. Samoa Joe, Kevin Owens, they're in the ring. I bet you Joe looked pissed off, and he probably is since he didn't get any match at WrestleMania, which I'll never understand why you wasted a year of having Samoa Joe at the biggest pay-per-view of the year. For what reason? Never explained. He should have had some role on the card, but he did nothing. He's there the next night. Here comes Seth Rollins to the ring, and we're waiting to see Seth Rollins' tag team partner, and here comes the return of Finn Balor, which the fans were very appreciative of. They gave him a great reception. He's a phenomenal talent. People just love watching him wrestle. So glad to see him back. This match is awesome. Back and forth. All kinds of movesets. Sling blade. coup de grace to end the match. You see Finn Balor hit the coup de grace and pick up the pin on Kevin Owens, which sets up some interesting future storyline planning since they were the two Universal Champions prior to Goldberg. It'll be interesting to see how they book that. There's so many backstories you could really look at here. You got Seth Rollins teaming with Finn Balor, who's the guy who beat him for the Universal Championship match at SummerSlam. You've got Kevin Owens, who took the title from Seth Rollins in the night to fill the vacancy. You've got Samoa Joe, who hates Seth Rollins. They've been brawling everywhere for the last, they've been talking about the brawl from the first night Samoa Joe debuted. And then what is Finn Balor going to do? He's got a history with both, pretty much everybody in the ring from either NXT or his match with Seth Rollins. So much backstory there that you could work with. The match itself, phenomenal. This was one of the best Raws I've seen in a very long time. And after the show went off the air, Goldberg actually made an appearance. Understand, he's out of contract. He came and did this for free. And he came out and he brought his son into the ring, who tripped and fell getting over the barricade, flopped on his backside. Goldberg actually made a joke about how he already took a bump, and that's more than he took in his entire career, which he's not far off, with the exception of the jackknife powerbomb to Kevin Nash and a couple Suplex City moments at WrestleMania. He really hasn't taken very many bumps in his career, just being honest. And he cuts this great promo about how he loved his time, this great run, and this and that. How we don't know if we'll ever see him in the ring again, but he ended it with the perfect way to go. You never know who's going to be next or what's going to be next, and he said never say never. So he leaves the door open to a potential return at some point in the future. Awesome situation, very cool backstory. I can't wait to see what they do. I'm fairly certain they've considered his run this time to be very successful. I'm sure they have something they'd like to do with Bill Goldberg in the future. I'm not sure who you'd put him against, or who you could put it. Even if it wasn't a match, you could even have spot appearances where he shows up in spear and jackhammer somebody just for the sake of doing it. Kind of like the Shawn Michaels appearances when he shows up. But I would love to see him in another actual match. Maybe he turns into, at least for the next year or two, maybe he's the guy who does one match a year at WrestleMania kind of thing, filling that void that The Undertaker is going to leave. But we'll have to see. Otherwise, pretty solid match, I shouldn't say match, pretty solid show, top to bottom. I was very impressed with the booking of this. I thought they had a lot of opportunity to really screw up. Since we didn't have as much star power at WrestleMania, I was a little concerned that they weren't going to put together a good show for Raw, but they proved me wrong. We're going to jump into our fantasy booking section of the show. We got 4 matches for you to get us closer to the end of our first round of our 128-man all former or current world champion tournament. We're going to jump in right away. We're going to go to match number 53. Match 53 is former TNA World Champion Bully Ray versus former ECW Champion Masato Tanaka. Number 54 is JBL, former and longest ever SmackDown Champion, versus his former tag team partner and WCW World Champion Ron Simmons. Number 55 is Kyle O'Reilly, former Ring of Honor Champion, versus former ECW and NWA Champion in TNA Rhino. And number 56, former WWF World Heavyweight Champion, the monstrous Yokozuna, versus former ECW, WWE, and World Heavyweight Champion Christian. So, put your comments in the YouTube section at the bottom of the page. I will tabulate your votes and put in the people that you think deserve to be in those slots, and we'll see who we get to at the end of this tournament. This tournament's going pretty well. I like a lot of the results I see. You guys give some great feedback for why you pick the winners you pick, and I really love seeing that. That's all the time I have for this episode. Check back with us in episode 62. We'll run down SmackDown results. For those who found out yesterday, we started launching our first ever video episodes. Those will go up on YouTube. Special thanks, as always, to bensound.com and purpleplanet.com for producing all of our music and sound effects used in today's show. Today's podcast was sponsored in part by Beazle Games. Bringing a new friend to family game night is easy with sketchy people. Showcase your artistic side in this new game from Beazle Games by going to www.thegamecrafter.com/sketchypeople to pick up your copy today. And to AlleyRepair.com. Contact Alley Repair today for servicing of all your classic skee-ball, pinball, and arcade game needs. We want to thank you for listening to today's podcast. We encourage you to go to our website at www.frolifeplanning.com to learn more about what Mr. Fro can do for you on your path to higher education. Remember, Fro Life Educational Planning is for today, for tomorrow, and for life with Fro Life. I'm Fred Froelich, better known as Mr. Fro, and I want to thank you for taking a few moments with us today. And if you're looking for more wrestling news and rumors, go to www.tsjsports.com/WWE for my latest articles on the world of professional wrestling. Until next episode, everybody, take care and have a great night.